To Mr. Massie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After sitting here for 2 hours in this hearing, talking about, quote, science-based rules, I'm reminded why a lot of people think that Washington, D.C. is a 10-mile square surrounded by reality. You know, I studied science and engineering at MIT for 6 years, but you don't have to be a scientist or an engineer to understand you can't do science without numbers, and you can't do science without units. I've heard terms like flow, duration, wet, dry, intermittent, but these things are not defined, have not been defined today, and are not defined in your rule. I've read the rule. It uses terms of art, but it doesn't use terms of science. And that's why we're going around the bush here and chasing our tails, is because we're not talking about numbers and units. The units we should be using, and the units that I see in state law, are acre feet, gallons per minute, 100-year flood, 500-year flood. Let me give you an example. Here's a definition of floodplain from your rule. It means an area bordering inland or coastal waters that was formed by sediment deposition from such water under present climatic conditions and is inundated during periods of moderate to high water flows. What the heck does moderate to high mean? Could you put these rules? You say they're based on science. A science-based rule would say a 100-acre flood, or a 100-year flood, or a 500-year flood. That's what I see missing from these rules, and that's why we're concerned. Why are there no numbers or units in the rule?
Actually, we put both definitions as well as we teed up a number of potential ways to actually bring more bright lines into the system.
Well,
we actually took comment on whether or not it should be a 100-year floodplain. So
well,
we
I would
paying
recommend
attention
that
to the science.
that you heed those comments and use them. Look, this is the 4th hearing we've had on this. Mr. Perciasepi answered a few questions for me. I believe he was your deputy administrator, is that correct?
That's correct.
I asked him about the cost of implementing this rule, and he once testified it was $100 to $200 million, and then he later clarified it to say it was $160 to $280 million. Do you agree with those numbers to implement it?
If you give me 1 second, I can tell you what the numbers are. I see the costs that have identified in the proposal is $162 million to $278 million.
Okay. I'm glad you agree with him, because on page 5 of your written testimony today, you say the rule provides continuity with the existing regulations where possible, which will reduce confusion and, I'm quoting you here, will reduce transaction costs for the regulated community and the agencies. So how can you say it's going to reduce transaction costs for the community and the agencies, and then testify that the cost is $160 to $280 million?
Well, because we are looking at both, looking at the overall cost of implementation and then looking at how effective we are in reaching those waters that are necessary to protect. And I think I made it clear earlier that part of the implementation challenge is that there are some waters which we are failing to protect that need to be protected, and there are others where we're spending significant costs and money to go after waters that are not essential for protection. And we're trying to clarify that.
Well, it's, you know, outside of this 10-mile square, that sounds like Washington, D.C. speak. You're saying it's going to save money, but in your testimony, but you're testifying that it will cost money.